And we are live. It is March 23rd, 2023. I'm Tim Montague. Welcome to the Clean Power Hour Live. We have a special guest today on the Clean Power Hour. He is Peter Berthelsen, Executive Director of the Bee and Butterfly Habitat Fund. And we're going to be digging into their Solar Synergy program. They're collaborating with developers around the United States to create more bee and butterfly habitat. So really looking forward to the show today. As our listeners know, the Clean Power Hour is brought to you by Chint Power Systems. CPS America, as they're known, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product line includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 kW to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. You heard that right. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication and controls and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome my co-host, John Weaver, to the show. Welcome, John.
Hey, Tim. How you doing today? Hope everything's all right.
Today is a glorious day, even though it's gloomy and rainy here in the Midwest. So many good things are happening. I feel our industry is gaining momentum, and the Europeans are noticing us more because we have such a growth market. We have the IRA legislation fueling the solar fire here in the United States, and I just feel the momentum. It's really a good feeling.
I think I have to agree. I will say, though, that interconnection woes are left and right, but modules are around, and it's cool to see all the announcements for manufacturing gear. So it's busy. It's very busy. Lots going on, Tim. Lots going on. Oh, yes.
Well, without further ado, also, I'd like to welcome Pete Berthelsen to the show. He is the Executive Director of the Bee and Butterfly Habitat Fund. Welcome.
Thank you. Looking forward to our conversation today. Going to be very exciting.
This is a topic that is so near and dear to my heart. I am a vegetation ecologist by training. I actually got interested in vegetation ecology because of restoration ecology, and this was now 30 years ago. I ended up not doing restoration ecology for my master's degree. I did just basic science on wetland forest in northern Wisconsin. But anyway, we have these things called solar farms, and they're growing by leaps and bounds, some small, some big. And we want to make these solar farms good habitat for wildlife, for insects, for birds, and other animals and plants. And so this is a very important topic, and one that many of our listeners will appreciate. So thank you for being here. And real quick, though, what is your background, and why did you start the Bee and Butterfly Habitat Fund?
Yeah, so Tim, I'm a wildlife biologist. I've spent my career designing, establishing, and managing high quality wildlife habitat, and that includes pollinator habitat. The Bee and Butterfly Habitat was formed in 2017 in an effort to get more of that kind of habitat on the landscape, working with private lands, public lands, corporate lands, which kind of includes any land. And it works and meshes really, really well with solar energy projects.
And what is the status of the organization? Where are you operating? And just give us the broad overview of what the status is.
Sure. So I'm talking to you today from central Nebraska, and like most entities and businesses in today's world, all of the staff of this organization are spread out across the entire country. We work remotely to deliver our common goals of getting more pollinator and high quality habitat onto the landscape.
Yep. So John Weaver found out about you because you published a press release. What was the story, and then we'd love to hear John's reaction to that story, so to speak.
Sure. So last week at the Solar Farm Summit conference in Chicago, we were able to use that conference as a platform to do a public announcement about this program that we call Solar Synergy. So press releases, news articles, social media, all of that kind of stuff kind of came to this crescendo of that announcement, and we were able to make that announcement, and in less than 1 week enrolled over 10,000 acres of solar projects that are going to be happening over the next couple of years into high quality pollinator friendly vegetation.
Nice.
Yeah, it was quite the response.
Good job. So 10,000 acres, how many individual facilities is that?
So right now, well, let me start out by saying that every day since that announcement, we have conversations that are happening with new solar developers.
Cool.
So right now there are 9 different solar developers that have said we have projects and we're enrolling them into the program Solar Synergy. They just fit like a hand in glove and mesh really well with what our corporate sustainability goals are and what we're trying to accomplish with our projects. And what you're trying to deliver, the 4 benefits that this program is trying to deliver that we'll probably talk about here in a little bit more detail.
Cool. So just for, rough estimations for everybody listening, 10,000 acres could be like 2 gigawatts worth of solar, somewhere around there, maybe 3, but probably closer to 2 gigawatts of solar.
Less.
So that's pretty
Less.
less. Well, less because Tim spreads his solar farms out because he lives in the Midwest and they have infinite land in the Midwest. Us up in the Northeast, we got a little less land. So
I mean, the Mammoth Solar Project in Indiana is 14,000 acres. I think that's
That's a
a
gig.
1.4
1.4.
gigawatt project.
All right.
So anyway, we're talking gigawatt scale though, right?
Yeah,
And
awesome.
and 10,000 acres sounds like a lot, right? My county alone in Central Illinois, Champaign County, is 640,000 acres. So we
Pretty
have to keep these things in perspective. This is a great number. This is progress, right? We also don't want our consumer listeners who are going, oh my God, they're going to pave over the breadbasket with solar panels. That's not the case.
Yeah,
But anyway,
but Tim, really key though. I mean, Peter here is telling us the exact opposite of paving. Peter is going to make our solar plant like happy for the birds and the bees and that type of stuff. So, if anybody's worried about 10,000 acres going to solar, it's not going to solar. It's going to solar plus birds plus bees, and that's really the kicker.
Exactly. This is very good for the land and for the ecosystem, and it's good for landowners and rural communities, which we talk about a lot on this show. But so, Pete, what is Solar Synergy? Just give us the nuts and bolts of the program and why are developers, because developers can hire an ecological consulting firm or a vegetation restoration firm, right, and get a bee and butterfly habitat seed mix and bada bing, bada boom. So what is the need for your organization and what is the program that you're rolling out?
Yeah, so this will be a little bit of a longer answer, but let me tell you first that this is mostly dealing with utility scale solar projects. We'll work with other things, but it really was designed with that in mind. And my personal experience is that on utility scale solar projects, the lower panel height, the leading edge of that lower panel, is kind of on average, I believe, becoming the industry standard that is 20 to 24 inches off the ground, above the ground. Okay.
Yep.
Well, as a vegetation management specialist, if somebody tells me design a vegetative cover that will do all of these things, establish quickly, provide pollinator value, be able to withstand mowing, it's cost effective, commercially available, carbon sequestration benefits, albedo effects if it's a bifacial panel project, all of those sorts of things. But it can't grow taller than 18 inches. It's very challenging. And I'll give you an analogy. So as somebody that designs seed mixtures, when I go to my toolbox and open the lid and look to see what are the tools I can work with, it's like I have a rusty screwdriver and a roll of duct tape. Very limiting. Can be done, But this program was designed to try to produce benefits for projects like that.
Yeah, and it's a well-known rule of thumb that you got to go at least 36 inches off the ground to get pollinator habitat. I mean, many plants, the tall grass prairie has that name tall because it's 10 feet tall. Uh, it's tall. And so we're talking short grass prairie, which has forbs and grasses, right? These are flowering plants that are habitat for butterflies. Butterflies don't feed on grass, to my knowledge, right? They're feeding on milkweed, for example, right? So you need a mix of things. Yeah, and so anyway, so yeah, we need best practices. That's a good thing, and we need pollinator seed mixes that are appropriate to the landscape, to the climate zone. We have 9 climate zones, I think, in the United States, right? Big country, many different soils and climates, and you got to plant something that's going to grow and thrive with minimal intervention. But tell us more about the problem per se, right? Like there is a problem, right? The more experienced developers in the U.S., if they're from the U.S., they're not used to necessarily doing anything dual use. Our European colleagues are probably further along in that on that front, and as are many of our Asian colleagues. Right, dual use is not new in the solar world; it's just new in the United States, just like solar in general. Right, we're playing catch up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
tell us more about the ideation, and if I'm a utility developer, why do I need your organization versus just reaching out to a local solution?
Yep. So the dual use, the words I use are multiple benefits that we're trying to achieve: soil health, water quality, pollinator health and habitat, obviously the generation of clean renewable energy, all of those multiple benefits that can come together. And the way that we do that from a vegetative standpoint is we design and use 2 different seed mixtures on every project. Okay. One for use within the array area where we have those vegetative height restrictions, and then one in the portions of the project that we refer to as the buffer area, where we do not have panels and we can afford to put in a much more diverse kind of typical pollinator habitat seed mix. And that on a utility scale solar project ends up being usually in the neighborhood of 10 to 15% of the total project area. And then the other part of that is going to that array mix. So that's the
What about
approach that
between
we
the rows
take, and it's
versus
pretty
under the
unique.
panels? Is there a need for a different mix between the rows versus under the panels?
No, we don't believe that over the course of a 30-year agreement that it's realistic to think that you can establish a vegetative cover in a row different than what you can establish under a panel. And that over the course of 30 years, you're going to realistically be able to manage that differently. Because you can't just plant something and walk away from it and expect that it's going to function very well. So we establish these in very different areas where there's a high likelihood that we can manage them differently because they're going to produce different results.
And so what I'm hearing is that you're analogous to ASGA, the American Solar Grazing Association. You're creating a platform that developers can grab onto. Is that the case? Are you familiar with ASGA?
Yep, sure. Yep, we're members of ASGA. Yep.
And I mean, they're trying to make it easy to pair up sheep farmers with solar farmers, right? And
Sure.
give
Yep.
those solar farmers good knowledge about what they need to do, how they need to engineer and design their projects to be sheep friendly, like having water on the site. You got to have something to drink for the sheep. That's not an ordinary thing, right? On most solar farms, that you got to have water. Although it is nice to have if you need to clean the panels. So there is that benefit. But anyway, it's interesting that you are getting a lot of interest, having been at the Chicago conference. I had to miss that, unfortunately. I was planning to go, and then my flight got changed and I wasn't able to attend. But what was your experience at the conference, I guess, and why are developers so eager for this this
Mhm.
resource that you've created, this solar synergy program?
Well, I think that developers are interested in this program for a lot of different reasons. It can fit with their corporate sustainability platform. You don't have to look at it very hard to know that it could theoretically help them with future permitting activities if they can point to the documented pollinator health and habitat benefits that we will be monitoring and the carbon sequestration gains that we will be monitoring in this program. That's going to produce data and outcomes that they can use going forward to meet their sustainability programs. And then I guess the last thing that I would say is that this program was developed working collaboratively with solar developers to make sure that this program was going to meet the needs that they had for putting utility scale solar on the landscape. So it's been a very collaborative effort all the way through this process.
One of the items I saw advertised was that you folks um, offer a free service. And as I was looking at your website, I also saw that there was a free seed mix, or potentially free. I'm sure there's some dynamics there. Um, I would. I'm really interested in knowing, this. Well, I'm a solar developer, but a tiny developer for ground mount stuff. But for a big project, seed mixes we're talking tens of thousands of dollars with, so how does that work together? Where do you guys um, earn the revenue to pay bills and feed people if
Yeah.
you're offering free stuff?
Right. So remember, we're designing and using two seed mixtures. One of those seed mixtures is being provided by the Bee and Butterfly Habitat Fund. That's this buffer mix. The array area mix has to be purchased just like it always was going to be. Then the carbon sequestration monitoring, the pollinator habitat monitoring, the habitat monitoring, and the connection to a commercial beekeeper. All of those aspects are offered free of charge, no cost to the
Hmm.
solar developer or the project. And we're able to do that because we have significant corporate and foundation financial support coming to the Bee and Butterfly Habitat Fund to help deliver these four different benefits that solar synergy was built on.
And when you oversee these four different benefits, or oversee three or four of them, does that mean you have machines or people on site? Like for the carbon sequestration, are you going out there and digging up soil and doing measurements to see what happens?
Yep, so that's a very simple, straightforward soil sample, probe in the ground, X number of locations on the site, and we perform it in year zero, pre-construction, year two, year four, and year six, and then document those changes as they occur over time, the changes in carbon sequestration. And the pollinator habitat and pollinator population monitoring occurs after the vegetative cover has been established and there's actually benefits to go out there and monitor and record. And then all of that data, carbon sequestration and the pollinator stuff, is shared with national databases so that the sample size of these solar synergy projects can be added to other efforts going on by entities like the Department of Energy.
When when you mentioned two other items starting the conversation, I thought that were cool. The carbon sequestration, which we already talked about, but you also
Yeah,
mentioned increasing or being conscious of site albedo. And
yeah.
I've once been told by somebody that they use like a blue-white flower in the spring, early summer, and
Hmm.
having that amongst the mixture increases generation to some degree. Um,
Yep.
what do you guys have via flowers to increase
Yeah.
albedo? Because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so one of the primary tools that we go to is the use of white Dutch clover.
White Dutch
Doesn't
clover.
grow taller than 18 inches, can withstand mowing, very inexpensive, fast to establish, persists over 30 years, a phenomenal carbon sequestration plant, deeply rooted to help move water off of the site and hold soil. Checks all of those boxes. Plus, it is documented to have an increased albedo effect. So that question you asked and everything I just rattled off right there is really reflective of how a seed mixture design on a solar project is a recipe. And we're trying to think about all of these different factors, not just one, not just is it good for pollinators or is it only good for albedo, all of these other factors. How quickly will it establish? Cost effective, mowing, all of those things.
So I once read about prairie grass, which you actually mentioned earlier, Tim. But prairie grass is a really good carbon sequestration product because apparently it just grows really, really deep, and the roots. I've seen pictures of roots like 6, 10 feet deep for prairie grass. Uh,
Yep.
do those deep roots have something to do with how the carbon sequestration works? I bet you Tim knows this answer, but we'll ask you today.
Yeah, so it does, and carbon sequestration, the really basic version is that plant is taking carbon from the air, from the atmosphere, taking it into the plant, and then sequestering it into the soil. So when we take those soil samples that you were asking about a moment ago, we're looking at what the carbon level is in the soil, and over time, it's not an instantaneous sort of thing. It's a
Hmm.
gradual increase over time, which is why we're monitoring that for a minimum of 6 years. We will be able to document those gains. And then the other part of solar synergy is when we document carbon sequestration gains, if those gains are able to be monetized into carbon credits, we bring together willing purchasers to the project that are ready, willing, and able to purchase those carbon credits. So
What do
it
you
really is
estimate?
a complete project. Solar Synergy is really a complete A to Z project and program that we're bringing for these environmental benefits.
Yeah, the I mean, there's really two things here, right? Because you've got the buffer areas that are going to have more plant diversity. That's the area for wildlife, basically.
Hmm.
Then you're going to have the in the panel area in the array, and but when it comes to things like sequestration, carbon sequestration, and reducing runoff is a big one too, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Sure.
we're very concerned about runoff from here in the Midwest anyway, because that runoff carries nutrients to the Mississippi, to the Gulf of Mexico, and there's a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico because of all those nutrients. But what do you estimate, Pete, is the delta, the before and after? Because what we're doing is we're taking typically corn and bean farm ground here in the
Hmm.
Midwest and converting it to solar farms, and now solar plus habitat, butterfly and bee habitat. What is how do you quantify the goods that come out of this proper treatment of the land?
Yeah. So earlier I used the phrase multiple benefits. And I believe that pollinator health and habitat is a unique glue that can connect to every one of these environmental issues: soil health, water quality, clean renewable energy production, pollinator health and habitat, grassland songbirds, food sustainability, just all of these different really important issues. Pollinator health and habitat, how we're going to design these seed mixtures, connects to every one of those things. So they can, in my mind, I know that we are a pollinator health and habitat organization, but every one of those things that I just mentioned are like co-equal, in my opinion. And so we're trying to do the most good that we can by very thoughtfully thinking about how we can design that recipe for a final vegetative cover that generates great, clean, renewable energy, but still produces all of these other many benefits as well.
Right. But do you have a number? Do you can you say, oh, we're going to reduce runoff by a factor of two or something like that?
Nope, I do not. But many of these environmental benefits where we're doing monitoring on these projects, associated with solar synergy are going to begin to actually document and quantify many of these benefits: carbon sequestration, pollinator
Mhm.
health and habitat, and that sort of thing.
And so there is a quasi-scientific mission here.
Sure. Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, the data that's collected will not be individualized to an individual project, but that data collectively will go into national databases that are looking at things like monarch butterfly population recovery, carbon sequestration associated with solar energy projects and things like that.
Hmm.
We're gonna add to those national research efforts that are being conducted by entities like Monarch Joint Venture and Argonne National Laboratory.
Yeah.
How many tons of carbon could potentially be sequestered in 10,000 acres? I know this is a really round number because it's probably different geographic locations, but
Yep,
what might, I don't know, I don't even know how to, calculate the value because, in
I
the
have
solar
the
industry,
answer.
wonderful.
I have the answer. So this is an estimate, but based upon the seed mixture designs that we are recommending and using. And let me back up and say we've been working on solar energy projects. The Bee and Butterfly Habitat Fund has since 2019. Solar Synergy is new, but we've been working on solar projects since 2019. We estimate that our seed mixtures will capture 10 tons of CO2 per acre.
10 tons per acre. Is that per year, per 5 years, per
Yes, per
project
year.
life, per 10
Per
tons
year.
per
Once
acre per year?
once once that has been established and is fully functioning. So once we're 4 to 6 years into it, our estimates are 10 tons.
Okay, so then in the first 1 to 2 years, minimal, three, four, five, as those roots
Hmm.
start growing, it's growing, and then once we hit a
Yes.
nice running pace, 10
Yeah.
tons per acre per year.
And
Yeah. And
isn't
then
that
if
figure negative for industrial farming?
Well, what I was going to just say is if a solar project is going on to something that was an agricultural production,
Hmm.
it's not going to be a high bar to show carbon sequestration gains.
Yeah.
That's an annual crop that was being farmed on there. And, in the case, Tim, of Indiana that you referenced earlier, it's almost all corn and soybean rotation
Yeah.
that's coming out and going into solar. So it's not a high bar for us to be able to document and show carbon sequestration gains.
Yeah. Because we're losing soil carbon on our soils.
Hmm.
We're basically mining our topsoil and running it into the ground. Forgive the pun, but it's really a serious situation, and it's not. We're not sustainably farming the breadbasket of America. We are mining the breadbasket of America, and so solar is a step in the right direction for giving the land an opportunity to rest and regenerate, and also creating habitat. So it's a great story. Um, Pete, we're going to wrap up this segment of the episode. How can our listeners find you and your organization?
Sure. So we're obviously on all the social media stuff. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We're on, Instagram, all of that stuff. But what I would recommend to really dive into this deeper than we could get in today is to go to our website, beeandbutterflyfund.org, because we have a solar synergy page. That's where you can learn more specific information, and you can fill out a simple contact us email reply, and we will be getting in touch with you and schedule a call and talk about in more detail how the program can work with a solar developer or an individual project.
And you're wanting to hear from developers, but also it sounds like sponsors. What types of companies are interested in sponsoring the fund?
Yeah, so corporate support has come from companies like Costco, that are interested, and it fits in with their sustainability platform that they have as a company. It's really, if a company is thinking about something about how are they going to support their sustainability efforts, renewable energy is obviously going to be one of the first things they think about. And who wouldn't want to have pollinator, soil, water quality, and other benefits associated with that solar project? Everybody wants that.
Yep.
One question that's more technical before you run. Can you retrofit projects?
Can you? Yes. Is it easy? No. So I think in a perfect world, Solar Synergy works with a project pre-EPC selection so that it can be baked into the project all the way through construction and everything else, and then be producing benefits for a long time to come.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pete
Yep.
Berthelsen with the Bee and Butterfly Habitat Fund. We
All
look
right.
forward to seeing your organization thrive, and we'll check in periodically.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. I've enjoyed the conversation today. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks,
All
Pete.
right. See you, Pete.
Butterflies, man. Butterflies are cool. I'm fond of the bee and butterfly movement. I'm fond of how we're doing sheep with solar plants. I'm very, very hopeful, but we'll see, of growing actual crop, food crop, underneath modules, around modules. Um, I know it's going to be challenging, and I know that the reality is, Tim, and you know this as well, the super majority of the projects that are being deployed these days are still just standard pound the ground, keep it flat type of thing. But, it's growing, and we're still early. We're only at 5% of our electricity from solar. Got another 45, 9x, 10x to grow. And hopefully within that chunk, we start to see an evolution in the product that's in the ground underneath these panels. I really like the food plus solar thing. And to be blunt though, Tim, do we have far more land than is needed to meet our clean energy goals. We've talked this many times.
Yep.
0.5% of the nation with solar could power the whole country, and we don't plan on using that much. So it's, these are things that we want to do to make the world better. We don't have to do it. We have enough rooftop. We have enough parking lots. We have a million times more land. And if we ever do offshore stuff, we have infinite generation, not infinite, but close enough generation capacities. But it would really be nice if we, put in these 30 to 60 year projects and they were healthy for us. That would just be great.
One of the things that I learned designing a project in northern Illinois for pollinator-friendly habitat is that the seed mix for pollinator-friendly, we had a seed mix of, I think, 16 to 20 species, something like that. It was going to be more affordable to plant the site with the pollinator-friendly mix versus just a turf grass, because you have to plant way more pounds per acre of turf grass seed, and so it was actually cheaper. Now, getting it to actually thrive is another question. The total cost of ownership. You have to do a different maintenance routine basically on this bee and butterfly habitat, right? You got to do some chemical treatment, keep the weeds down in the early years, do some mechanical treatment. You don't want to let things get out of control, but you got to get the prairie going basically. But anyway, so it's cost effective, and that's one of the reasons the developers are really glomming onto it, is they realize that it's not this isn't going to hurt their bottom line, and it's such a good for the environment. And most people in solar really care about the environment. That's one of the things I like about working in solar, is there are a lot of environmentalists in solar. Not everyone. Some of them are just hard-nosed business people trying to make a buck, but a lot of our colleagues are very concerned about the environment and giving back, so to speak. We're going to be, the Earth is going to be fine in the long run. We're actually in this phase where we're trying to save humanity's butt. And we're trying to shoot ourselves in the foot by collapsing the ecosystem that we're embedded inside of. And, climate change is part of that collapse. There's other things that we're doing. And there's, I like to say, like, we are creating the great filter as we speak. And that's why we're not being invaded by space aliens, or as far as we know, we're not. Elon Musk has other ideas about that, I think. He is a space alien.
Maybe. Maybe.
So let's get into the news, John. You brought some news from the Ukraine, of all places.
Yeah. Maybe I should, before I talk about that, how about I give a review of where I was on Monday and Tuesday? And Monday and Tuesday, I was at the SIA Finance, Tax, and Buyers Conference in New York City.
Oh,
And
awesome.
I put an article on there regarding one group that we spoke with. Well, one group that we listened to, Meta talked while there. But the tax and finance show, I'll write an article or two on it. One of the key things that came up when everybody's talking about IRA and tax credits and 10% and signing deals today is that I learned you can buy tax credit insurance. And the reason you want tax credit insurance is because you're unsure today whether you're going to get a tax credit for domestic content, or because we don't know how it's going to work. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Or
Right.
you're unsure if you're going to get the other tax credits, which for some reason have just escaped my mind. But the dynamics of having to wait for months and maybe even to next year for some items of guidance from the Treasury Department has made that solar contractors, solar developers, solar lawyers are all very hesitant to sign deals with these adders, the 10% domestic content, the 10% energy community, the
Mm-hmm.
10% low income adder. And in order to feel safe about this, people are buying insurance. Now, for the low income adder, the logic that people were putting out there is we're not going to insure that. It seems like it's a lottery and there's going to be a huge volume of people submitting, and the odds of any one person winning are low enough that it just doesn't make sense to sign a deal on it. So if you're dependent upon the low income adder at this point, you're going to have a challenge finding a project buyer with that force making the project pencil. However, if you go domestic content, it seems there's a much higher chance that you can, do your job. Then the energy community stuff,
Yep.
depending on the maps that are out there and where your project is, there are some situations where the energy community adder feels very safe to add. Like, for instance, if you're right next to a coal plant or you're in a very low employment area,
Yep.
and other places where it's a little tougher. And so I learned that if you have an attorney, a third party attorney, who writes an opinion and says, yeah, I see this energy community working and they're from a reputable law firm, then you'll have a chance with a tax insurance person. And so, I've heard about tax insurance. This is the first time I've ever really seen it being really, really important. So that was the biggest thing I learned. It's just that so many people are waiting on guidance on the IRA that it did slow down project deployment in 2022, and it has slowed down project signings in 2023. I personally know of several projects that put off certain things moving forward because of incentives and trying to figure things out. So I don't know. New York City was cool. It's always pretty. I ate some good street food. Always like eating food from those little trucks dotted around the city, and there were a lot of
Yeah, and
smart people there.
we don't toot our own horns here much on the Clean Power Hour, but if you're a corporate facility owner and you want to green your facility, please reach out to me or John. I can do a large scale PPA. That's my preferred type of development. I do 1 to 20 megawatt projects. So behind the meter, power purchase agreements, and community solar projects. And, the Metas and Microsofts and Amazons of the world are mostly buying these very large PPAs that are virtual, right? They buy the power from a solar farm that is remote from their operating facilities. Could be in the same part of the country. Um, Facebook is a good example. AKA Meta, they're building a data center in Northern Illinois, and they're building or they're partnering with a developer to build a 200 megawatt solar farm right near that data center that they're going to buy all the power from that project. But most of the solar and wind projects are disparate from the facility. But you can do an on-facility PPA also, right? Behind the meter facility PPA. That's my expertise. So anyway, go
Yeah,
ahead.
and speaking of Meta, though, we have an article. Meta presented as one of the buyers at the show and was telling the solar industry, what they do, how they do it, some of their thoughts. They're about the largest corporate buyer of solar electricity in the United States at just over 3 gigs, 3.6 gigs, and
By a
they
lot,
have
yeah.
by a
The
lot.
next largest was 1.1 Amazon.
Yeah, and they have 9 gigs in the pipeline of projects, probably including your Illinois. And the most interesting thing I heard with their presentation was they will reach out to the utilities up to 18 months prior to deploying their data centers and start negotiating tariffs, specifically solar tariffs. And they reach out to the utilities 18 plus months sooner because they say that's how long it takes to figure out what's going to happen, how they're going to get solar, and if it's going to work. And they prefer to work with utilities that give them a little flexibility. So Meta's data center placement is partially, at a minimum, dependent upon the utility allowing them to pump clean electricity to said data center. So it's
Yep.
now, to some degree, it may be tiny, but it's Meta. It's this, they're one of the giant data center people. To some degree, utilities are being shopped for their clean energy resources or their flexibility to offer clean
Yep.
energy resources, and that feels great. I mean, if the big players of the world who are buying the big electricity go straight to the utilities and say, listen, we're not building this giant energy sucking computer building unless you give us some clean juice, man, that's sweet. That just sounds awesome. So that was what I took mostly from the Meta conversation, and the fact that they're just blowing everybody else out of the water when it comes to total capacity that's getting deployed. So good job, Meta.
List of large corporate PPA buyers, and Microsoft is a lowly number 5. They're trying to clean their grid retrospectively, right? They're going back 30 years trying to decarbonize their operation. Very ambitious, but yeah, Meta is kicking butt on the solar PPA front.
Yep.
You ready to talk about Ukraine?
So, Tim, you and I, we complain about some challenges. Permitting, interconnection, land lease agreements, annoying neighbors. Ukraine has an annoying neighbor. Very.
Yes, they do.
They're building a 114 megawatt wind farm in the midst of a war, Tim.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some street cred there that I don't think I'm ever going to be able to compare with. And I'm okay with that. I don't want to be able to compete with this. So in the midst of a war in which one company is throwing rockets at a country is throwing rockets at another country, these people are climbing giant towers and building a wind farm. And I don't, that's coolest thing of the week from my perspective. I mean, I'm afraid of talking about it just so that the Russians don't get all, emotionally hurt and start launching missiles at it and just start taking them out or something. But it's like, man, that's pretty cool. Good job, Ukraine. I mean, whoever's climbing towers in the midst of a war, yeah, you got some guts. So rock on.
So this is a story in Electrek that you found by Michelle Lewis. The title is Defying Russia's Assault. Ukraine completes 114 megawatt wind farm. A company called DTEC Group completed the construction, and yeah, I gotta hand it to them. Building a wind farm in the middle of a war, but life goes on, right? They're in a war, but they also
Yeah.
got to run their economy and grow their economy and grow food, and so a very tough situation. But I guess it's a glimmer of hope that they're able to at least keep building clean energy facilities. And looks like this project is using Vestas 6 megawatt turbines.
Yep, yep. 19 of them, man. That's and I don't know exactly. I don't know how wind turbine plants are wired, but well, maybe Tim, but if you take out one turbine, or does that take out a power plant, or are they designed in parallel?
I'm
Are
sure it
there?
does not. It's just like a solar array. If one string goes out, the array doesn't go down. You could think
Yeah,
I think of a turbine as a string, um, albeit a big string. Uh, a 6 megawatt string. It's painful for the operator when that happens,
of course.
because 6 out of 120 is a big chunk of of the of the uh, of the facility. This is one of the reasons why solar developers are segueing away from central inverters to string inverters, so that when the inverter goes down, it's not a 5 megawatt loss, it's a 250 kW loss. And
So, well, good job, Ukraine. I'm reading much about the nation is deploying other clean energy resources to make themselves more defensible, um, and whatever. Good work by those people, and good courage by those folks working. And I guess you're right. Life goes on. It's just really hard to comprehend certain things going on. But good work, folks.
well, you found a really ugly photo of some very dirty solar panels. Uh,
They're from Hawaii, and they're covered with, I guess, algae. I mean,
uh,
look at that, dude. Look how dirty those solar panels are. I mean, oh my gosh. You can't even, I mean, you can only see the edges of them on a couple of them, and then, the one or two right above it, it's like, oh, Tim, that's a dirty solar panel. What do you think oh, look how pretty and clean it is afterwards. Man, what a nice advertisement for that piece of hardware.
yeah,
That's
it's
some
definitely good advertising for the solar robot cleaners. And I don't know,
Solar Cleano. That's
Solar
one of the
Cleano.
Yeah, I
Oh
believe
yeah,
they're a German manufacturer. They could be Dutch, but I think a German manufacturer. So
yeah.
nice unit there.
I'm familiar with Solar Cleano. Don't we have a colleague in California who reps that
Nope,
company?
not that company. Different
Oh,
company. Yep, yep,
different.
yep. Yep. So they're pretty cool.
Luxembourg.
I saw. Oh, so Luxembourg. Oh, so neither. Yeah, next door to those countries. Um, yeah, I've never seen solar panels covered with so much gunk in my life. And when I saw that picture, it's like I got a shiver. And to some degree, I was a little bit afraid. I'm like, man, I hope I don't have any projects anywhere in the world which have something like that going on. It's like, how does that even occur when you have a solar plant in the sun all day long? But I guess it's Hawaii. There's lots of rain, lots of things in the air, lots of stuff floating, just getting blown around. So that's just a real great example. If you're not cleaning your panels, at least go up and look at them, or at least look at your output and verify they're not covered with a moss and haven't been taken over, and then call somebody to scrub them for you if that's going on. So yeah.
So we have 10 minutes, John. We have to be selective about what we're going to cover here. Um, I do want to talk about this perovskite story.
Yeah.
And is that your story?
Nope, not mine. Just something I thought was neat.
Emiliano Bellini
Emiliano,
in
yes.
PV Magazine. Midsummer develops 24.9% efficient 4T tandem perovskite SIGS solar cell. What's the story, John?
Perovskite is now being layered on top of thin film solar. And the reason I think that's cool, beyond it simply being perovskite, because I'm a big perovskite fan, the reason I think it's cool is because from my very limited reading of how perovskite is applied, it requires tools that spray. There's a dissipation. I don't know these words, but you literally spray materials down,
Right.
and the perovskite along with thin film are both materials that can be done via this. It's a deposition. That's a different word, but
Yeah,
it's close to
I
this.
think that's an accurate expression.
All
Deposition.
right. Well, deposition isn't that thing you do in court when you get in trouble?
It's got multiple meanings,
All right.
but yeah, they're
So
effectively spray painting the material onto
yes,
the substrate,
yes.
and so this is a beautiful image here showing the 4 terminal phase 1.
Hmm.
Um, so this is a truly sandwich. I mean, all PV is some form of a sandwich, but this is an extra beefy sandwich with traditional. What the traditional part of this is the SIGs part, or what is the traditional technology in this?
The traditional technology is the SIGs, yes.
Yeah,
And it's the perovskite that's the new stuff. And the SIG stuff is on the bottom, the perovskite's on the top. And the SIGs is normal. It's like First Solar. And that's actually a wonder I have now. Is First Solar experimenting with perovskite, adding layers to their product? I mean, they have the research to do it. Uh, so SIGs, just to let you know, SIGs is thin film, and thin film is generally made via vapor depositions, where they spray paint, float stuff in the air, and it comes down. And
yeah.
so the coolest part is that this also, with perovskites, uses this. So it just seems like it could be not a quick, I don't want to say that word because it's science, but it seems like it could be a easier transition than, a whole new product line. So it's just cool. And we're gonna have 35% solar modules, Tim, and 35% efficiency solar modules is gonna mean that the rest of the project essentially costs 40% less. 40% less steel per watt, 40% less human labor per watt, 40% less inverter per watt, 40% less everything per watt. Maybe not inverters, but everything will cost less per watt because you're going to have less solar, price per acre. Price per acre may even be able to go up because we're able to get so much more solar per acre. If you can get 40% more solar in 1 acre, then hypothetically you could pay 40% more acre. So there's it's going to come hard with perovskites. And by the end of this, I mean, everybody keeps saying end of the decade, and usually those people are right because, they're very mature and honest people, and they're not trying to be fanboys like me. But I think it's coming sooner. I think we're going to have a perovskite product on the market that really upsets their competitors before 2025. I mean, I'm hoping next year. I'm just throwing stuff out there. But in 2025, it's just we've been working on it hard. We'll see though. Perovskites are coming.
And in case you're wondering what SIG stands for, that's copper, indium, gallium, and selenium. And I just want to give a shout out to the Energy Transition Show. Great podcast. They just dropped an episode. Chris Nelder is the host of that show. They just dropped an episode, John, about the supply of rare earth elements and all the stuff that we're going to need for the energy transition. Things like copper, indium, gallium, and selenium. And so there's now a very robust peer-reviewed journal article that lays this out. And because one of the ways that naysayers attack the clean energy transition, including electrification of transportation, is they say, oh, there's no way we have enough copper or lithium, right, to do this, guys. So just cool your jets. And now we have something to go. No, actually, the scientists have crunched the numbers, and we do have enough stuff. And so check that out. Energy Transition Show. Moving on.
I'll do a quick one.
One more.
Coal. Well, we're going to do two.
Coal plant in New York.
No, this one's actually in New England. This one's in New Hampshire, but there's no coal plants in New York. And this is the last coal plant that's in New Hampshire. And it lost out on its bid for capacity payments. And these capacity payments are worth a lot, like hundreds of thousands of dollars per month. And a capacity payment simply pays a power plant to keep running. We want you there to run just in case we have a high risk time of the year and we need your capacity. We're not asking you to run 24/7. We're asking you to be ready to run. And if this plant loses its capacity market revenue, what's that mean? What's going to happen with its revenue? What's going to happen with it being able to stay open? And I know this sounds mean, but I hope for their economic collapse.
So this is a story in a publication called Granite Geek. I've never heard of this before, but the title is "Coal-Fired Power Plant Fails for the First Time to Win in Regional Power Auction." So it's somehow the phenomenon that the story is about is that they bid a price that was too high, and so they're not winning a contract for that plant. Is that the deal?
Yes, yeah. So every year, utilities bid to be in the capacity market, and this is different than selling energy. This is just guaranteeing that you have a machine that can run when it's called on. And so they bid a price to be in the capacity market, and they were beat out. They were beat out by others who
This is
had
the
lower
peaker
prices.
plant market.
Sorta, yeah, yes. It's a little different than peaker because peaker, well, to be honest, it could be the peaker plant market. It feels different because peaker plants are usually gas plants that they're not used for capacity. They're used for energy during expensive periods.
Yeah.
But maybe peaker plants also get capacity. I'm not certain. I've never done that type of work. It's parallel. It's without a doubt. It's in the same category as a peaker plant. This is during peak demand when there are challenges. Like there was a winter storm last December or so in the PJM territory, which goes from Illinois to Virginia, and a bunch of plants didn't come on, and there are literally going to be billions of dollars in fines because a bunch of gas plants weren't ready to run, even though they were getting paid capacity payments. But when they were called on, they flopped. And so it's sort of kind of like peaker, but I think it's a different market. And it's just, it's like hanging around. It's like, hey, I need you to be a bodyguard and hang around. You don't have to do anything. But if something happens, then you got to flex your muscles. And I think that's kind of how capacity works. It's you just got to be ready to run, and you gotta know when we might run. That's your professional responsibility, and we'll pay you just to hang around.
So is your sense that this bid failure, so to speak, is jeopardizing the future of the power plant? I mean, so many coal plants are scheduled for decommissioning. I think 90% of existing coal plants, we've already decommissioned a bunch of them, but 90% of the existing fleet is scheduled to be decommissioned in the next 10 years. It's imminent.
Yeah. I don't know their finances to say, hey, you're going to get shut down from this, but I do know that this plant has a very low capacity factor. And if you look at the New England ISO, Independent System Operator, it's rare that there's coal ever running. So they're not making much money. And now if they just lost another big money thing, they're making even less money. So I'm hoping that their failure is imminent. I don't know if it is. Just, dreaming. I got dreams, Tim. I dream of things. And these guys going out of business is one of my dreams.
I'm going to put this piece of art on screen that you found by Nicole Kellner.
Nicole is cool.
Apparently she's interested in the grid.
Yep. Well, I everybody, if you want some cool watercolor art, you should visit Nicole, and you should see all of her watercolor art because she paints all kinds of cool stuff. She paints solar panels, wind farms, nuclear plants, and this is just another one of her little things. If you click on her name and then we check out her historical media that she's posted, we might be able to see some of those other pictures. But she's always click on the media link down there. Let's see what other stuff she shared. Yeah, so she just paints watercolor stuff and she sells watercolors. And I just wanted to show off that grid one because it's cool. And I know that she earns money here. I once bought a pair of shoes from her that had the climate stripes put onto them. So they had, they were like a pair of high top Converse type of shoes.
Yeah.
And at some point, I want to get a print of her other drawings, just I don't know, some kind of solar power grid thing. Or it's funny because this was the original grid drawing, but then somebody gave her feedback and told her to edit it, and so she added more sections and more zones because she's in the
Yeah, it's
know.
much more interesting with the ISOs called out.
Yes, yeah.
But
So if you want some watercolor stuff from an artist that's related to solar, then or related to clean energy, find Nicole Kellner, and she'll make you some pretty stuff.
beautiful. There's so much culture in the clean energy transition because it involves all of society, actually. And we need thousands and thousands of more people to come into the clean energy transition. So if you're listening to this, reach out to us. We'll help you get a toehold if you do not have a toehold yet. Or take a step up if you already have a toehold. So, John Weaver, how can our listeners find you?
In a state of absolute confusion. We're working hard here at Commercial Solar Guy. We're busy. We're trying to grow. Might be hiring a sales guy soon. You can find us at commercialsolarguy.com, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and that's mostly it. So just Google Commercial Solar Guy and you will find us. We're out there.
Check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review. If you appreciate our content, please tell a friend. We would love to spread the word about the Clean Power Hour. We are speeding the energy transition. One podcast, one interview, one news roundup at a time. And with that, I will say, let's grow solar and storage. I'm Tim Montague. Take care, John.